Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Uh, Super. Okay, good. Let's get this show on the road. Welcome to Growing Your Revenue with Embedded Financing Emerging Markets. Um, I'm very sure this is going to be interesting. And the reason I'm saying that is I saw this tweet on. I'm not sure I can share my screen, but there was this funny tweet. It wasn't funny. It was a news story on TechCrunch about a revenue generating startup that had raised $14 million. The the work of the startup is generating revenue for other startups. I'm very sure. Chikodi, you're smiling like you've already seen that tweet. You've not seen it. I will make sure everybody sees it before we leave this conversation. But yes, it's like revenue is super important. That's why we're in this. That's the point. And we're going to talk about how embedded finance and what exactly that is and how it supports in getting to a place where you can comfortably call your company a revenue generating startup. Not the one that helps other startups generate revenue, but that you yourself is generating revenue. And this applies whether you're a startup or whether you're an an SME or a large company. But before I get too much into my head, I'm just going to let my guests introduce themselves. And I'll start from how my screen is laid out. And so the first person on my screen is Dr. Stephen Oluwatobi, which is also nice. Did you guys bribe StreamYard or something? Because they put you there and you're the hosts and sponsors of this.
That's
but
quite interesting. I'm surprised as you.
All right, super. In the meantime, we would love this to be super interactive. So even though you cannot join us and like have your face be displayed on the screen, it would be cool if you would leave comments. So if you're listening wherever you're joining us from, please leave comments. We will get the questions and we will try to answer those questions as they come. With that said, Dr. Stephen, please take it away. A quick introduction. So Dr. Stephen and then Kene is on my right, and then Chikodi, and then I'll talk about myself or not. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Abraham. It's really a pleasure to be here, and pleased to meet everyone here. Kene, Esiobu, Chico, good to see you. I mean, I was listening to your voice. I mean, proud to us meeting here. Good to be here, and to our audience, I'm glad to be here. You're all welcome. So my name is Stephen Oluwatobi, the COO at Kora. Kora is basically a payment infrastructure company. We're on a mission to basically eliminate every possible digital financial barriers that will enable businesses, to scale effectively across Africa. So we're purely a payment infrastructure company, and we leverage a lot on innovation to achieve a number of things that we're going to do. I'm hoping that this session will be enlightening for every one of us, including myself, and this can take us all to the next level. Thank you, Abraham. Abraham, your mic is muted.
I was telling Kene that his mic was muted and my mic was
Oh
muted.
wow. Sorry about that. Um, yeah, thank you so much, Abraham. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephen. Thank you so much, Chikodi. Also, thank you to everyone that's joining on the call. Quickly, I'll just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Kene. I'm a data insights and research consultant. I'm currently working at Kantar. In a nutshell, I'm passionate about people understanding people, also understanding brands and how essentially to find growth. And that's what I've sort of devoted the better part of my career doing. Once again, it's nice to be with everyone here, and I look forward to a very fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Your mic is muted once again.
I will not mute this mic anymore. If you hear any noise, please ignore. I was saying that we have a numbers person in the room. Um, So that's very good. In case we start messing up, there's someone that can pull our ears and say no, come correct. But Chikodi, please go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone. Um, it's good to connect with you all. My name is Chikodi. I am the CEO of Salad. At Salad, we are building embedded lending technology. We provide um, embedded lending technology and access to capital to B2B software companies, predominantly in the e-commerce payment space, that allows them to host an in-app lending experience to their SMEs. So we are basically providing finance in areas that typically will be described as hard to reach. I would actually describe ourselves as a revenue generating startup actually, because we help businesses scale and grow their merchant capacity. So that's about what we do now. Brief background about me. I started my career in banking, so I have finance background. But then I spent 6.5 years across Jumia and Konga, building multiple verticals. So, why that is important is that today I have both banking and software experience. So that allows me to appropriately integrate financial services in software platforms, being that I have sat on two sides of the fence. So that is my background.
All right, super. Thank you so much. I am simultaneously looking at the stream on LinkedIn, and may I request that if you go to if you're joining us, wherever you're watching us, Moyo has left two comments. The second comment has a link um, that directs you to that helps more people to join this. So let me encourage you to join that. Take the link, um, take the link and drop them on the in your LinkedIn, your WhatsApp status, and wherever. Let's get more people to join us. And before we get into the conversation, with that said, my name is Abraham Augustine. I am currently an ecosystem and marketing manager at the Norrsken Foundation, and I run Apersu. Apersu is a boutique advisory and consulting company. And yeah, let's get into the conversation. I'm going to be asking the questions. Um, uh, I'm going to be asking the questions, and we'll jump right into it. We'll start with a question that I want Chikodi and Dr. Stephen to answer at the same time. But we'll just start from you, Stephen, and then we'll go to you, Chikodi. You take this question for you. What's the most? I know we should define what embedded finance is, but I'm going to go out and assume that ChatGPT has done that work for us. So, in the spirit of being super efficient, right? I will avoid asking what is embedded finance and just get right into question. What do you consider the most important value of embedded financial services? I would love to hear the Kora perspective, and because of the fantastic introduction that Chikodi has just given us from banking, but also startup, specifically working with startups and companies like Jumia and so on and so forth, which really lend themselves to embedded financial services. So I'd love to hear that perspective and also with what he's currently working on at Salad. So, Dr. Stevie, what's the most important value of embedding financial services of any kind?
Okay. Thank you very much, Abraham. I'm hearing like the background. I don't know where that's coming from. Is it you, Abraham, or someone
I
else?
think that is myself.
That is you.
That
Okay.
was why I muted earlier, but it's okay.
Okay. All right. As long as everyone can hear us. All right. So as it relates to your question, thinking and reflecting, because I usually like to approach things like from a more simplistic, viewpoint, and maybe just to help the audience in a basic, simple terms. There's nothing really rocket science about embedded finance. Every one of us we are involved in some way, whether as users or builders, when it comes to embedded finance. So it's basically integrating financial services, into non-financial services, just to make those services available and to serve end users, consumers or customers. as the case may be. I mean, that's just a basic, simple definition of what it is. So that being said, which of course is necessary to give like a background to what I'm about to say in terms of value. So what then is the value? So the way we gauge value is from the viewpoint of the end user, because the sense of developing a product really is not for you. You don't develop your product for you to consume only. If not, the business is going to end like the moment your satisfaction is achieved. All right. So what you want to do is develop a product that is valuable and that is seen as value by those who are the end users. And this is how we gauge it. And it's a philosophy, that governs and guides us, which of course is reflected in our vision and mission at Kora. So let's rewind back in time to say maybe like 20 years ago, even maybe 10 years ago. But I mean, 10 years ago is even still fair. But let's say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, like what does it take to really start a business? In simple, basic terms, what makes an entrepreneur is number one, the ability to identify a problem and understand that problem clearly. Your ability to also to be able to create a solution, to that problem in the best possible unique way, which of course will be in form of either a product or a service, right? And then your ability to find or leverage a platform, whether physical or digital, where you can sell this product or service as the case may be. And finally, your ability to be able to be rewarded or collect money for these services. Now, if you look at 20 years ago, look at like before Paystack, before I mean 2015, 2010, and the rest of those. Nigeria, we didn't have like so much of a problem when it comes to identifying problems. In fact, I mean it's the home of problems. There are lots of problems. All right. We didn't have so much issues or challenges when it comes to coming up with solutions. I mean, Nigeria is blessed with a lot of creative, young, bright, smart people, all right, who are able to identify problems and also create solutions to them, right? Platform also was not much of an issue, even though, talking about, lots of years ago, maybe the teacher platform was still taking like lots of shape, particularly in the African side of things. But at least we had the physical platform where you want to, trade or sell things, right? The bulk of the problem usually, which usually limits the entrepreneur, is how do I collect my money and get rewarded for the services that are basically provided, right? So in this case, you can find really brilliant and smart people, but they are not able to really get rewarded, satisfactorily, not because they don't have great products, but because they don't even know how to collect their money. And so embedded finance, started to play a very solid role, in the case of, in this case, the embedded payments, Paystack, came up with their own tool. We're privileged also, to start something, around that same time period, which is what Kora basically does. We provide those kinds of support. And now we find people who don't only, are able to, create value, but at least through embedded payments in this case, which is basically a subset of embedded finance, they can easily now collect and be rewarded for what they're doing. So what is value to us? The typical African person who is really working hard to create something cannot get rewarded, irrespective of industry or space. So just look at how even musicians are able to scale, right? Someone writes a song, creates a song, and then there's a platform by which you can scale and then get rewarded for it. Now imagine those platforms don't exist. It's just a reflection of what can happen if we don't have basic tech solutions, that can help entrepreneurs or creators or artists to be able to get reward for what they're working for, or whatever value they're creating. So the balance has to be there. So to summarize, what I consider value is from the end user point. How can it help the typical entrepreneur scale? How can it serve the basic customer? The other thing that I would like to look at that is coming to my mind now um, is how the end user experiences it, right? One of the things that we embrace, which is one of our values at Cora, is innovation, all right? And the way we measure it is it simpler? Is it cheaper? Is it better? Is it smarter? Is it faster? If it doesn't fall into this category, then it's not innovation, right? Because I mean, you can build it and you can like it and you can love it and you can enjoy it because you built it. But in the end, the person who determines whether it's value is the person who will reward you or pay you for that particular service, which you've embedded, of course, some form of financial services into. So this is how I'm going to look at it in terms of value.
I love this. I love this, like the way you sort of taking us back, and then still brought us into the actual embedded finance. Um, like in terms of value from a customer perspective, from the perspective of someone who is actually using the product. I'm going to bring the question to you, Chikodi, and maybe if you can, because Dr. Stephen has given us a very good overview standpoint to look at this from. I'm curious if you can speak to the specifics of this, and this is your opportunity to sell your market. But seriously, I would love you to give us a perspective on how this works when you're dealing with particular customers. And feel free to pull examples from Salad, but also from your previous experience. Dr. Stephen has said you don't build a product for yourself, you build a product for the customer. What does that mean, specifically in the context of embedding financial services? Where does the customer begin to derive value? If you can abstract that into an illustration of what that value represents for the customer, I would really, I think the audience will also appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so like Dr. Stephen, I think I'll try and storify my response. The question being, what is the value of embedded finance? The first thing is, embedded finance is finance, right? The embedded is an adjective. It's basically how the finance is distributed. So, like you said, it's not rocket science. It's not something new. It is finance that is embedded. Okay, so it is an adjective. So the real question I think you're asking is, what is the value of finance, right? And then the answer is, finance is an enabler. They'll say money is a what's that word? Money is an enabler. It basically helps you do things. It amplifies, right? You've built a product, and people are supposed to pay for it. How are they able to pay for it if the infrastructure is not there? They go to the bank, just like back in the day when somebody wants to pay for their school fees. Let's say they are going to university, right? They fill a form on, let's say, a platform, and then they go to the bank, they pay in the bank, and then they bring that slip back, and then they fill in a number, and then they get admitted. You then embed payments into that platform. All of a sudden, people are able to apply and pay. What does that do? It makes things quicker, right? It amplifies the process, and that's typically what embedded finance is. It's basically taking all the benefits of finance and bringing it closer to the people to amplify. There is a there's a saying that I think was written or maybe on the walls of Conga, and I think it was "do more faster,"
Mm.
right? And that's basically what embedded finance allows us to do. I'll give you a use case with Salad, for instance. There's a platform that, let's say, an e-commerce platform that sells food, or they sell the food of third-party restaurants. If you listen, you probably know who I'm talking about. So there's a platform that sells the food of third-party restaurants, and their value proposition is that they are able to get the food to the hands. I mean, to the hands of the users in an hour or less. And this food is really nice food. But the problem is that these merchants are like tiny guys who have one store in Yaba, another one has one store in Lekki. So they then integrate lending, right? All of a sudden, the restaurants are able to access finance on those platforms. So what happens? Those restaurants are now able to collect money to open two, three, four shops, right? And what happens to that platform? The platform now has times four GMV because the demand is there. So that's basically what I'll determine as value. Now, because of the definition of embedded finance, right, you typically have B2B to C models or B2B to B models because there needs to be a middle participant in which you embed the finance, right? So that typically involves a third party. Um, so what that typically leaves is that the value should not only be seen by by the end user, but it also needs to be realized by the person who is offering their platform or offering their infrastructure to be embedded into. I hope that's clear. So that's how we typically look at value. There's a slide in our pitch deck that says win-win-win. So we are providing value not only for the end user who has quicker access, right, and ability to do more, but the middleman who typically integrates whatever embedded financial services, they also grow. I always proudly say that there was one platform that integrated Salad, and very couple months after they raised a round because their platform basically grew in GMV and it became attractive to investors, and investors invested in that company. So when I look at value, I look at how can we see growth across the value chain, which is basically the purpose of money, right? How are we able to distribute, make financial services more accessible to everybody within the value chain, which is the end user, which is the middle, which is the middle participant. And in our case, we also work with banks. So we have about 4 people in the value chain, and everybody is seeing value from embedded financial services.
Mm, interesting. I would love to. I will come back later to the part, your ending part. We also work with banks. There's an interesting point I want us to pick apart from that place. But people, if you're listening and you're struggling to raise an investment round from investors, you know what to do now. Uh, I want to come to you, Kene. You've talked. You're a data analyst, which basically means that you crunch numbers and you look at. I want you to bring um, some sort of numerical perspective into this whole embedded finance play. We've talked about like Chikodi has talked about how how startups or businesses, not necessarily startups, because it's an interesting pivot that can sit in between both businesses and consumers. Um, but I want you to speak about when you when you advise clients or businesses, and if you've done this, if there are any examples you can specifically cite where people begin to consider, oh, do we embed financial services? Oh, do we not embed financial services? Is there a place where this is useful? What do you look at, or what do you find that they are typically considering? Or at what stage do people get to before it begins to become more appealing? Essentially, the question is, what where does a company need to be before this does not become another buzzword? Like they've said, it's not rocket science. It's not a particularly new thing. There are subsects of embedded finance, as it were, that we all use without thinking about it, right? But when you talk to your clients and you talk to people that you work with, what do you typically see them, or where do you typically see them at before they start considering doing some sort of integration into financial services that they would otherwise not consider?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. That's a very, very great question. So basically, it starts with understanding what we like to call the consumer funnel or consumer disposition funnel. Basically, in a simple way, it's just about converting people from at the point when they become aware of your product to the point where they use your products. Right now, despite all the efforts that every team, every product team, every marketing team generally applies to make sure that you get people to the end point of using your product. Um, that's if you look at that whole funnel or that whole journey at a larger, from a more holistic perspective, uh, you would typically only get about 20%, and if you can even get 20% of the people that you engage with, to the end point, that's actually very good, right? Um, Typically, you will become very aware to lots of people, and then you will have to convert them to trial and so on and so forth. Now, why are people dropping off along the journey? One simple word: friction, right? So there's friction on that journey that is making people drop off, essentially. Now, where it becomes imperative to begin to think about embedded finance is thinking about how do we reduce that friction, right? As a brand, you always want people to stay within your ecosystem for as long as possible. That's where you generate lots of value. Um, You also always want to be thinking about what are the new opportunities and where are the new spaces that I can tap into, right? Um, and then you want to be always present at every stage of the journey. So in that natural sense, that's why like you said, it's not a new thing. It's for instance like a bank. Banks operate with the same concept, and I think you brilliantly put that out in the reports, where a bank essentially bundles many services and presents it as one package because they don't want you to go out of their ecosystem, typically speaking. Um, so it's at the point where you begin to think about growth and when you begin to think about things like increasing revenue or increasing the lifetime value of your customers, right? You need to
Okay.
think about how can I keep these people in this place, right? And then you then need to begin to think about how can I layer on services or how can I layer on finance to make that process, reduce the friction in that process, and to also extend the lines of my brand, to extend its reach, to extend its appeal into other spaces. Generally, that's how we think about it.
Hmm, interesting. I love that there was something you mentioned that really struck me. You said that at the point when people begin to think about embedded finance is when you want to sort of increase lifetime value, and you're now beginning to think maybe much more strategically about how you're
Mm.
earning income from the customers that you've acquired already, on how you're reducing that drop off. And I think that's an important point. But given that point, Dr. Steven, I'll come back to you. I'm coming back to you specifically because you're chief operations person at Kora, and my understanding of operations means they dump all the headache on you and you have to figure it out. Chikodi does not agree. He
I
doesn't
guess the reason
agree.
why I guess the reason why he doesn't agree is possibly because as CEO also he has to do the same thing too. Like at the beginning of the journey, like you have to combine both, being everything, if you really want to build something magical.
Don't worry, Chikodi. The headache will soon reduce. But Stephen, please, I'm curious. When you work with a lot of people, and Kora is payment enablement, and you work with a chunk of people that want to integrate more types of payment services and whatnot. And maybe some people in the audience, I don't know, might be thinking about this. Question: what are the biggest operational hurdles when you begin to assess opportunities for new clients, when you work with people, when you're onboarding people, when you're even just talking to people? What are those things that they point out and they're like, this, or what are the things that just naturally happen? I think it's important to point that out because someone is already getting excited. They're like, Chikodi said, if I integrate salad, investor will come. So before they get too excited, let's bring them down to the earth a little bit. Still retain your excitement. It's not a bad thing. We want you to be excited, but we need to also be grounded in what are those things that come up when you actually begin to consider that, okay, this may be a viable option for my business. And it goes both ways, I guess. Also, from the Cora perspective, I suppose that there are things that come up on your end, and maybe if you can share a bit about that.
Okay, thank you so much, Abraham. I think before I share with that, I just want to, first of all, I love the way Kene just shared that his perspective on that's as relates to at what point the people even want to embrace, maybe entrepreneurs even embrace and even adopt the use of some form of embedded finance. And it's good that that question came up because I've seen, even I myself have gone through those experiences like decades past, moving into tech and all that. So for the entrepreneurs on the call listening, particularly the starters, right? Yes, you've heard of embedded finance, but remember, don't fall into the trap of of going for the nice to haves. Just focus on what you need, right? Don't beware of fall into the trap of the nice to haves. You're right. This embedded finance. You want to integrate this, integrate that. Focus on what you need, and build from there. Uh, and if, whether it's your personal money or whether it's investors' money, either ways, you, the extent of your responsibility is reflected in how you deploy resources. and how much that resources can yield the returns that you need. So what infrastructure would you require where embedded finance is concerned? Focus on those and use that to capture as much value, because in the end, your scoreboard is just like playing football and soccer. No matter how much you're dribbling, in the end we're all looking at the scoreboard, like what's happening on the scoreboard. The scoreboard will tell you what you're doing, no matter how much dribbling you are doing on the pitch. So we go fall into the trap of the nice to have. That just came to my mind as Kene was speaking. Um, Now to answer a question on operational hurdles you mentioned, of course, I mean, particularly in Africa, I mean, there's a lot of drama. Um, there's a lot of drama when it comes to basically dealing with embedded finance, looking at the basic, gaps involved. How do we deal with it? Maybe I should just even mention like some of these things. And the reason for this is to just be very clear. And the reason why these are hurdles is you are not 100% in control of everything, right? And that's what makes it a hurdle. This is what you can control. This is what you can't control, and that's the very honest truth. So, say for instance, now when it comes to embedded finance, let's speak. What we focus on. Kora now, implementing infrastructure company. There is the regulatory side of things, right? There's a regulatory compliance side of things that needs to be addressed. For instance, you can't begin to process payments without some regulatory backing, that is getting some licenses to be able to do those things, right? So anybody who, for instance, wants to integrate, some form of, embedded payments, like if you want to go from scratch to go to, to go and get a license, like, you're already finished from day one, right? So there's a regulatory side of things. Now, you don't have 100% control, of that. This is what you can control. This is what you can't, control. And that's just one, amongst other factors. Now, another aspect could now be developing the technology, right? Technology in itself, sometimes, could have a mind of its own and it could break. Thank God, we have now, AI and AI agents, that we can use to, double and turbocharge, how we do things, now these days. So when it comes to integration, also, there could be complexities that needs to be addressed. Now, this is not to talk of the potential risks that could take place if an integration is done poorly, whether from your side or the merchant side. It could lead to some form of financial exposure in itself. Fraudulent people could take advantage of that, right? So these are some basic things, that need to be attended to, the regulatory side of things, the integration side of things, potential risks that could happen. And as I mentioned, so the way we judge it and we ask ourselves simple question is, what can we control, what can we not control? Another thing to also consider is around data privacy, because I mean, customers, users, merchants are trusting you that their information and data is well used according to the agreements that we've had with them, whether it comes in form of an SLA or an agreement or MSA, whatever the case may be, or whether it's to accept or decline, a particular term and condition. So that they're trusting, that we're working, within the global best practices where GDPR is concerned. Security also is a very crucial thing. So just think about it, embedded finance, definitely finance, like Chikodi mentioned, finance is involved in it, in some form or in some way. What's the extent of exposure? I mean, in time past, even recently you hear of certain exposures. This amount of money got fraudulently taken from this platform, or data stolen from this platform, or this bank just lost this amount due to cyber security loopholes. So security also is a very crucial thing. So even in dealing with security, there's some basic things which we adopt a lot at Kora that are very crucial, where everyone, because we understand that beyond technology, and the people still remain the first line of defense, because the weakest link can lead to like a huge exposure. So to what extent and how much do you educate the people to ensure that they understand what phishing is and how they can detect a phishing trap and overcome such phishing traps. Besides all this, we also have the extent of scalability. So in building your tech, and maybe this is kind of even related to what I mentioned concerning integration initially. In building the technology, you also want to factor in the possibility of scaling at the beginning, right? It's usually best, I mean, to also explore cloud infrastructure also, because you also want to gauge, as your transaction volumes increase and transaction value increases, you want to ensure that everything that you have from technology to the non-technology is also scalable
Mm,
accordingly, which of course we should see and see how that reflects in the numbers. Like I
mm,
mentioned, using the soccer analogy, like the scoreboard,
mm,
we should be looking at the scoreboard at the end of each week, each month, each quarter to see, how we're doing and how we're performing basically there.
mm,
In addition to this, and I'm sharing this that's from our own perspective here at Kora, as it comes to mind, because I mean these are things that we face that we deal with when it comes to operation. Because and that's why I started by saying there are things you can control, there are things you can't control. However, I think the good news is as you focus mainly on what you can control, right? You can use that to leverage enough power to address things that you can't control,
mm.
particularly 100%. Like you play your part and then see how you leverage that to scale stuff. Things to also consider also when it comes to operational hodl is reliability, because you want to ensure that your platform is reliable, right? Users, end users, or merchants, whether it's a B2C or B2B now, want to be sure that if they come to this platform to do whatever they want to do, there's no glitch, there's no explosion, there's no essentially this didn't deliver, or I was debited, and the other party saying, I wasn't credited, or maybe the stuff is not working and all that. And the dependency side of this is that oftentimes, even as fintech companies, there are other dependencies. I heard Chikodi saying something about banks that they also work with, right? Whether as partners or not. Now he doesn't have 100% control over those banks. So any flop in any of the banks, somehow directly or indirectly has affected him and has affected both the customers and the businesses that basically is serving. Same also at Kora. So, and these are things that you can't go and give excuse and say, oh, okay, it's your banking partner or it's your partner, that has caused, whatever gap or whatever issue that it might be. So we must continually, keep our eyes, and ensure that this engine is well lubricated and always working and always fixing. And I think, particularly for the entrepreneurs in the room, I think one of the things that can help you out is to ensure that you have very good, healthy systems and structures, right? To ensure that um, because the thing is not whether or not the issues or the hurdles will come. The issue is when. It's not about whether it's going to come or not. It's about when is it going to come, right? And you have to start, from the beginning, building the required systems and structures to ensure that um, these things are dealt with in a more automated, systematic way. Have policies that everyone understands, particularly those who will execute and implement these things. So just think about it in form of a building. If you know you want to build a skyscraper, you better start factoring at least how strong your foundation should be, and the pillars. The more you want to go up, the more pillars you must factor
More,
in, like
more work.
strengthen it exactly,
Yeah.
just to make sure there's
Let me
stability. Yeah.
let me pause you there because they did not pay for this thing, and you've already started doing like a master class or something. So next one has to be definitely paid, and you guys will have to come with people listening. You have to come with like pen and paper, and we'll have a chalkboard somewhere, virtual chalkboard. Chikadi, yeah, everything Dr. Steven was saying was just a headache, and he has outlined a few of the headaches he has to face. Question for you: I know you mentioned the. I don't know why you didn't want to mention their name, Sha, but I don't know if the person I have in my mind is the same person you were talking about. So, so I will also not mention names. But when you talk to these people, and let's assume they're people that, at the very least, have a sense of hurdles that could come up, especially when they are not technology first players, if you will, right? Um, can you maybe construct a simple scenario that you walk us through how you get people to even test out embedded finance as an offering, right? If someone was to, okay, this sounds interesting, but also A, B, C might go wrong, which to Kene's point, brands want to always operate from their strongest, they also always want to put their strongest foot forward. Well, what does that look like when you're talking to these people and you're having to navigate um, these sorts of questions, especially, and I have to sort of stress this, when they are not tried, because the whole essence of embedded finance is bringing financial services to non-financial context, as it were. So maybe if you can speak a bit to how you so what that pathway looks like to testing this out. Again, we're wearing a very prominent Salah t-shirt, so we permit you. Kora has permitted. If it's me, I will not permit you. I will charge you. But Kora has given you the freedom, so go ahead and share with us. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I mean, thanks for that question. Where can I start?
Mm.
So, I think
I
something around what all of us have said is, um,
just one
it-
one once 5 seconds.
okay.
Where I'm looking at the LinkedIn stream. I don't know if there is another stream somewhere, but I'm looking at the LinkedIn one now, and I just wanted to encourage anyone who's listening. I see there are some. I'm seeing a sales champion somewhere. I'm seeing someone that has product something. I'm really curious to hear questions, or maybe they will challenge you guys and say it's a lie. Everything you're saying is not true. But if you do have questions, please feel free to drop them so that I don't get out of hearing my voice. Chikodi, apologies for interrupting you,
No
but
worries,
please
no
carry on.
worries. Okay, so like generally, right? I think Kenneth touched on it. Dr. Stevens also touched on it. Is for every business, the your primary objective should be on your business objectives. I think that's the very first thing. If you're a food delivery business, focus on food delivery. You have
Mm,
your internal your North Star metrics, right? Is it number of businesses you want, number of individuals you want to deliver food to? Is it number of restaurants you want to onboard? Whatever it is that your business does, whether it's technology driven or not non-technology driven, I think the very first thing is to focus on your business objectives, right? Um, so e-commerce, for instance, primarily they are trying to get goods and services into the hands of people who want them, right? Without them having to leave the comfort of their home, or so that they can do it over, over the computer, right? That transaction cannot be consummated without payments.
mm,
It cannot be consummated without payment. So payments then becomes something you need to embed into your core offering, right? And I think that's basically how I would advise businesses to kind of think about embedded finance is how can I amplify or accelerate or scale my current business objective. So that's number one. Number two is I I was brought up with, and I think this will come out a lot in the way I speak. I was brought up with waterfall methodology, right? I started my career in the bank, but now I am an avid agile practitioner, right? So um, from a rule of thumb, right? When you before you invest in anything, whether it is a new feature or whether it is whatever it is, whether it is monetary or time based, you are investing, right? So you take the principle of risk over reward, okay, or return on investment. That's on one side. But then on the agile side, you also take a look at your MVP. I have seen a behavior, right? And I feel like this thing can be further amplified if we were to, embed some form of finance at the point of most intent. Okay, that's something else that you probably come up in the way I speak, which is, embedding finance in the point of most intent. If I ask people, for instance, how many of you have collected a loan? A lot of people are shying. I don't need. I'm
me, I've
okay. I don't need.
collected
You know. And well, I mean, you're an edge case. Most people are like, nah, I don't need a loan. I'm good, right? But when you are trying to buy lights on your estate management app, and they tell you, oh, okay, can you just get an emergency token and pay in 3 days or whatever, right? Oh yeah, that's normal. What you don't know is that you just access credit, right? But if at the point of you buying that light, they ask you, would you like to go to your bank to collect a loan to pay for light? You most likely say no, right? But if they make it simple for you to just say, okay, collect light on credit and pay in 3 days, that's normal. So that's basically how embedded finance is, right? You put it at the point of most intent. You make it easy for people to do so. So back to what I was saying, from a business point of view, take a look at your risk reward quotient. You also take a look at your return on investment quotient. And then on the agile side of things, you take a look at your MVP, which is what is the quickest way I can launch this, I can provide value to my customers, right, without having to, in the least amount of time, without having to invest as much, right? That's basically the MVP principle. And for that, I would advise partnerships. So to answer your question, first things first, we believe that businesses should be at a certain level, right? Of they should have some clarity into their business objectives, and then finance will then be embedded. Again, like I said, embedded finance is not a tool. It is basically embedding existing finance into their existing workflows, right? To see how finance can turbocharge or amplify what they already do. So
Mm,
one of the things that I joke to people internally, like this is the closest I've been to feeling like a VC. For clarity, what we do is we provide embedded lending services, which is we provide capital within your platform for either your end users or your merchants to be able to access. So there's a bit of risk assessment that we need to do on that platform before we integrate. So you
mm,
would have certain platforms sending us stuff like maybe like their pitch deck, because we also need to understand their user flows, their customer journeys. We need to do risk assessments and stuff like that. So yeah, first of all, there needs to be clarity on business objective. There needs to be clarity on existing workflows, and then we then determine, okay, we feel like, okay, this is the best, this is the spot of highest intent, in which credit can be placed that will bring most value to both you, the platform, and your customer.
mm. Interesting. Thank you. This is really really interesting. I want to come to you and thank you so much. I love the example that you used, the estate example. I think you brought it very close to home. Um, you obviously will not walk to a bank except you're living inside the bank, and the bank is open 24 hours.
Mhm.
But you get to have the benefit of that convenience. Question for you, Kene. Um, when Chikodi was talking, a lot of what he talked about seemed to me to be some sort of data analysis at a certain point. And this question is maybe a little bit out of the beaten path, but I'm curious because you're representing Kantar in this conversation. And again, this is a little bit out of the beaten path, but I'm curious the extent to, or if you can share specific examples, or I don't know, of how you are working or you've worked with businesses that have come to this point. I'm curious how Kantar works generally with assessing data collection and so on and so forth for businesses. Um, I have a rough sense of this, but I'm really curious if there are examples of where you've done this sort of thing for businesses that are considering having some sort of financial services integration and how that went. What maybe a way to reframe that question was, what did the business see and it made them go, okay, this is now suddenly much more interesting. Yeah, I don't know if that is something you can provide some
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah. Thank you. So, sorry. So, ultimately,
But you can't take it. So
yeah. Thank you so much. So, ultimately, I think it's not so much a complex thing, really. It's just about solving business problems. At the end of the day, right? So, as a business, you get to a point where you're thinking, you're asking yourself, how can I grow? And then what is then that pathway to growth, right? Um, Essentially, it's about, at least from what we've seen, essentially from all the extensive work that we've done, it's fundamentally about three things, in terms of when you're thinking about growth, as a business and as a brand. The first is to predispose more people, which essentially is about making more people love you. You want to simplify it in that sense. And then maybe when people think about a particular need that they have with your brand that comes to mind, right? Um, The second is what I've already spoken about briefly earlier, which is about being more present. So you always need to be present at the customer journey, always also offering them a particular service that can suit them. So what I mean, for instance, is this: is that Jumia, for instance, does a lot of marketing work to get you to check out. Now, at that point in checking out, a lot of people are lost, either because they don't have enough money at that point in time to complete that transaction, or due to one such reason, right? But if I to just take that one reason of not perhaps having enough money, right, to complete the transaction, right, that's a friction in that customer journey. Now, be more present means that is there a solution that I can apply to ease this friction? So you might be thinking of something, a more traditional buy now pay later kind of thing, right? Right, kind of solution, right? Which is embedded finance at the end of the day, right? The last then is finding new space. That's talking about how brands grow essentially. So you always need to be thinking about finding new space, and then what is the when you look at the when you look at the at your growth, you look at the path that you're on. You also look at what the market, what's happening in the market, how the market is resonating. You can identify opportunities, and then you can then say, oh, can I partner and extend the scope of my brand, right?
Mm.
An example, for instance, is Apple, right? So Apple traditionally sells um, gadgets and devices, right? But then to extend the brand, to also make it easier for people to buy Apple products, they offer a card, which is basically still embedded finance. And then they go ahead and partner with Goldman Sachs. Now that's at a high level, you're talking about very large valuable brands. But then by that partnership, Apple also benefits not just operationally, but then also in terms of the brand perception, how people perceive the brand. Wow, you guys are able to partner with Goldman Sachs, right? And then that makes the brand more
Mm.
appealing at the end of the day, right? So it has its way in that sense, but it's still a very simple understanding of what is the business problem that I have. I need to grow, right? And then you begin to investigate that. Do I need to innovate? Do I need to refine my customer journey? Or do I need to do some other thing? Do I need to radically pivot into something else? So yeah, that's how one can think about
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Interesting. Because we're almost at time, I spy one question in on LinkedIn. That question is a very interesting question. This person is looking for trade secrets, but we won't we won't humor them. It's okay. They were just asking about the relationship between Kora and Salad, so we're going to keep that question on the back burner. The topic of this is growing your revenue with embedded finance in emerging markets, and up until now, we've really tackled the what you would call foundational parts or pieces of this, how you think about the business, the challenges that you should be aware of, but also the opportunities that you could be unlocking for yourselves when you start considering embedded financial services. As we wrap up, and hopefully Chikod is able to join us, I want us to talk about some specific ways that different industries already or could potentially begin to embed financial services. Okay. Chikodi is backstage, so I think he's going to join us. So I'll go from you, Dr. Stephen, and then Kene and Chikodi when he comes back. How can different industries um, begin to sort of embed finance? And by different industries, I'm going to throw out random examples: beauty and makeup, super random. Don't ask me why. Um, Tailoring and fashion, right? How how do these different? Oh, shoot! Can I leave? Okay, that's fine. But the question is, we want to we're looking at growing your revenue, right? Which is ultimately what every business wants to do. Given the different players that you work with, what are specific ways that companies are already, but even more importantly, could be generating revenue when they by considering embedded finance? And think of the most random industries or sectors or segments possible. And I'm really, really curious to hear your take about where embedded finance applies. I'm very certain it doesn't apply in all industries, but I'm also super certain that there are spaces where embedded finance applies, and it may be useful, just to get a sense of what are those opportunities, how are they already being taken advantage of, but also, maybe even more importantly, where are the white spaces where we're not necessarily doing enough right now, and maybe you can chip in why those white spaces are still white, why nobody's going to stay in those white spaces. So I'll start from you, Dr. Stephen, and then Kene, and then Chikodi. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you, Abraham. Somehow the input or contribution I wanted to make to the question you asked, Kene, is kind of like tied to this. So I think I'll just build on from there and then just enter
Why not?
into and that was brilliantly said, Kene. I mean, I'm very and it's a culture we have actually at Kora. I mean, the importance of data and analytics, like super, super, super important. So um that's like the intel. That's the intel. It's just like, just imagine maybe 50, 100, no, I mean 50, so maybe like 100 years ago, all right? If you had told someone that you go to a platform and then you ask it something or you speak to it and say, where is Abraham working now? And then it responds, and says, exactly where Abraham is working. I mean, it will look like juju. I mean, for those who are not Nigerians or here, I mean, it's like saying like magic, kind of thing. And all that is because of algorithms that leverage largely on data. Right. So at Kora, if we look at all the products that we do and how we brilliantly serve all our customers, looking at various verticals, most of those, came, yes, from inspiration, but also largely from insights from data. Right. So at a glance, we can see where the money is moving, where the money is coming from. At a glance, we can see what sectors, what verticals, right, what sectors of the economy, money is really moving in. We can know what kind of products. So, for instance, now we do collections, which a number of people call payments. We do disbursements, which some people call payouts. We do card issuance, USD card issuance, VBA issuance. Basically, providing products across African markets, which will allow businesses to scale simply with a single API across Africa in all the markets that they were present in. Now, given all this, now we're able to see on a daily and weekly basis, and by extension, of course, quarterly and annual basis, we can see exactly what are the channels that are the topmost. And we can say, hey, this channel is doing the most. These people are asking for the most. Can we double down on this? Right? Based on insights also coming from merchant success, which a number of companies call like customer and customer support units, right? Insights, feedback from customers and merchants also gives us insights and data. By the time you are seeing that on a particular subject, 8 out of 10 persons are saying something. That's already data and insight. We take that, use that to improve on the quality. That's why I call data like intel, right? To improve on the quality of our products, to improve on the services, to guide us on where to double down on. It just makes sense to put more money where more money is made, and then expand our array of products. Not because I mean some products are nice to have. So one of the products we have is called the KYC as a service, right? Which we noticed was a need and a demand, from a number of those we currently serve, and even those we don't, currently we didn't used to serve before, who are now, users of Kora, just because we were listening to data, paying attention to data. Right. So data is very, very powerful. With it, we can use to like predict a lot of things. You can use that to save a lot of money, right? Like so I go into a country, for instance, now to expand to another country when there's nothing leading you there, right? You might end up, spending so much money. Um, Case in point is Safaricom. So Safaricom is known as the behemoth of mobile money in Kenya, and they recently opened up in Ethiopia, and while in Kenya, they largely unlock a lot of value and revenue, through the mobile money. All right. And then, they're able to, generate, some amount, which of course I say some because I mean, if you compare to what they generate from processing through mobile money, I mean, it's really so insignificant. They generate also from, airtime, data and all that. Now move to Ethiopia, like a different, ball game, different environment. Like the people they are not even doing any mobile money, anything. They're just buying airtime and buying data. Which of course is completely different from what now that's different environment, different context. So don't just wake up as an entrepreneur and say you want to expand to Ghana. Question is why? I mean, have you explored data from what the likes of what Kene and Kantar they've done to help to understand what are the opportunities there, and how
Mm,
you want to explore such opportunities, and then you move them, not go there blindly and then burn a lot of cash, and then
mm,
which you should have used to make more money when more money is made. That is double down on where to allocate resources to, because I think one of the hardest things for the entrepreneur is how do you effectively deploy your resources from money to time, to resources to people.
mm.
How to effectively
Int-
deploy all those in a way that you can unlock the best of value, because in the end it's still the scoreboard. The scoreboard will show how badly you've done that or how good
Good
you've done
you've done.
that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that you've taken my question and you've now made it now sound like it's not about the industry at all at all. Just look for where the data tells you. And I think that really fits very well with Kora being an enabler in this particular um, space. So I will sort of still pull on that thread that you've taken us on for you, Kene. Um, and the question is, from what you clients you've worked with, people you've spoken with, in terms of spaces or industries where the data is showing us. And I think we're over time. So if you give us a few minutes and then I see two questions, still the question about salad, I won't take the question on this call. I think Kora you, or Salad, you can respond directly to that question on LinkedIn. It's a very, very specific question. As well as the question about partnering Kora, like super specific questions. I think those questions are best taken directly from Kora. Um, but connect to you, Dr. Stephen has talked about the importance of data and intelligence and like open, shining your eyes. Let's put it like that. Going into the market with your eyes open. Question for you: your eyes have been opened, your Kantar. So tell us, what are you seeing? Tell us, what are you seeing? Oh my God!
Sorry. Yeah, thank you so much. So, can you just start that last part? So, what am I saying in terms of what?
Yeah,
Because I
what
just
are
dropped
you
for you.
seeing? Where should Salad is currently doing embedded lending? What's the next
Mm,
embedded something that we should be looking out for? Maybe it's embedded tourism. I don't know. Tell me so I look for how to
yeah,
get VC money. I'm joking, but
yeah.
the point is, in terms of spaces that
Mm,
may potentially be right, and they don't just have to be spaces as well. Dr. Stephen gave us a brilliant example about M-Pesa's um, giant experiment in Ethiopia. So these may also be like existing spaces, but geographically they are underexplored. It could literally be embedded lending for Northern Africa, for example, things that are Sharia
mm,
compliant. But let me not answer my own
yeah,
question. So over to you.
yeah. Thank you so much. So, I think from what we've seen, I think there is, and it's intuitive, and even though we talk about it all the time, it really is the realities of working in this region of the world. Access to capital is very little, and so um, especially from a B2B perspective, it's very limited, and that drives a huge amount of demand for lending. So there is a huge demanding for access to capital. So if one is working in a brand or is solving a problem that you think access to lending can increase or can reduce friction, right? So if you're in a marketplace and you see sellers, lots of sellers that are having lots of volume, it's the natural thing. I mean, there's a lot of demand for that, right? Because people want to be able to
Mm,
extend what they can do with their businesses, right? So lending is still not because Nigeria is not just Nigeria, but just this region in general. You're still in markets that are still emerging, so you have a lot of demand for that essentially. So that is going to be huge, and we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of exposure and also in terms of adoption. So that is going to be huge.
Interesting.
Also from a consumer, yeah. Also from a consumer perspective, so um, in terms of just adoption of products and services, there's also a lot of runway, or there's also a lot of extensions that can be made. The value of what people are buying is increasing, but it's only increasing because of inflation. Inflation effect, right? But actual volumes are reducing, so people are buying less. You know, so if embedded finance can fix that gap, in anything else, if it's a fit, then that's also something that can, and it's about how you creatively think about it. You have a lot of, if one is a telco, right? Just for example, if one is a telco, you can think about how can you embed finance to make people get access
Mm,
to particular devices. There's bundling services. I mean, MTN is already making a play in streaming. In streaming, you can come up with a bundle, right? Pay this amount, you get access to streaming. You also get access to device. You can even also insure maybe the phone. It depends on how creative you think about it, right?
mm.
So essentially, there is still a lot of demand for purchasing, right? So if embedded finance can really play a huge role in that sense.
Yeah, this is interesting, and I kind of see a link or a tying back to what Dr. Stephen has talked about, which is essentially, um, as opposed to looking for giant truths, as it were, um, that are obvious. It's more about being intelligent, spotting the things that are maybe not so obvious to people that are outside all of these transaction flows and behavioral data, and then exploring whether that's a fit for you. Um, Chikodi, back to you now. Everybody has talked about lending, so permit me to make you a bit uncomfortable. Do not talk about lending. But no. Same question, right? Same question. Kene talked about working capital. Essentially, I think that's what we're into. There's a lot of working capital that. First question actually. Does Salad currently provide working capital? I think you mentioned something similar to
Yeah,
that.
we provide credit for to SMEs, predominantly working capital.
Interesting. Okay, okay. Let me just speak to you. Tell. I want you to run us through the different offerings that Salad currently gives. Um, but here's the caveat: you have to tell us which one is the most promising.
Which was most promising. Okay,
No,
all right.
no,
So
yeah, it's
sorry. So yeah. So typically, how we leverage embedded technology, right, to accelerate lending across the value chain is thus. Um, I'll start with an example. So there is a small business, right? A small business goes to a bank and he requests money from a bank. After, let's say, 7 to 8 days, the bank says no, you cannot access a loan.
mm,
Okay. This bank sells on a very popular food delivery app. Okay. Because we are
mm,
integrated into this food delivery app, we are able to see real time, real time sales data, right? And then we're able to qualify that merchant based off the existing sales data on that platform. And because that platform also has a wallet system and collects payments, we are able to collect directly from source. So because of these things that we do, the bank, we are now able to go back to that same bank that said no and get a yes from that merchant. What I just told you is a real life story. A merchant went to a bank, said no. He applied through his platform, he got a yes from the same bank. And it was slightly lower priced, and the bank paid us for it. So we have four different people within that value chain. We have the bank, we have the merchant, we have the platform, we have Salad, all of who are now winners because of the way we've applied our embedded lending technology. For the platform, that guy got capital and he opened two new stores. And now he's doing maybe triple his volume on that same platform, and they are earning three times the revenue from that merchant. So that's how we are basically approaching. That's how we are basically approaching embedded technology. As regards the opportunities that exist, because of the way I've kind of explained what we do, so Salad looks for any environment where we are able to get real-time sales data, right? It could be via any marketplace environment. So any environment where you have merchants selling to consumers. It could be, think of payments, POS. You have a payment platform that they have real-time collections, right? We're able to see real-time sales data. We're also able to collect directly from source. Think about supply chain apps. We're able to see when supplies are paid for, when supplies are retrieved. So that's how we're looking at positioning. So right now our sweet spots are typically in any marketplace. So you think about e-commerce. We are also now going into environments that have digital banking but don't offer lending. So that is, they have other services like, let's say, savings first or payments first or any other form of, I don't know, digital banking. We're able to then extend lending as a service through that platform to the end user. I think just kind of round up, one of the reasons why you can see that lending is kind of like the predominant the predominant response is because lending allows existing businesses to do more, right? You are able to get working capital to increase your capacity, and that's basically what leads to economic development. um, Also, when you read up on embedded finance, they'll tell you that lending is typically a wedge, right? It's typically the lowest hanging fruits, almost side by side with payments. It's typically the lowest hanging fruits when it comes to embedded finance. So you have non-financial institutions, non-financial platforms can very quickly embed lending. And for us, when you get integrated into Salad, or when you integrate Salad into your platform, you get a dashboard, right? And on that dashboard, right now we only provide lending, but we can very easily, maybe led by data, offer you additional financial services. That's what a wedge means. A wedge means you attack the lowest hanging fruit or the most pressing problem, and then you can then
Mm,
pivot into adding additional services.
fascinating. I I absolutely love this, and there is a thread on this lending path that I would love to pull um, going forward in the coming weeks. I will give the final word to Dr. Stephen to sort of close us out on this because this is yours. Were his guests, as it were. But let me first thank you, everyone that has stayed with us. There are several questions that I think may warrant your attention, Chikodi. There's a question about whether salad works in Ghana. And there is a question. There's still that question about whether salad is integrated with Kora, and I think some businesses happening may possibly happen here in the comments. I've done a good job. Thank you. I'm patting myself. But be that as it may, thank you very much. One thing I need to highlight though is that this is an extension of a conversation that we created, a white paper. And I think the example Chikodi gave about the business that couldn't get a loan from the bank, but now intimidated by Salad, now is able to get a yes from the bank. And there is the payments provider, there is Salad, there is the bank, and there is this merchant. I think it illustrates one of the points we made in the white paper, which is that embedded finance is part of this thread of it's a mix of both modularizing different components of finance, but also bundling them together. So at the back end, it's modularized. You're doing origination for the bank, you're originating those loans, you're doing the risk assessment, and you're helping collections. And the merchant is on this other end. But in front of the merchant, they also see one unified body and they have a unified experience. All of that to say that in the LinkedIn comment, if you're watching, um, there is a link that has been dropped to the white paper. I encourage you to go and look through that and read it, leave comments. I personally will be extending that white paper series because I think there is maybe something worth like looking deeper into different things that have been mentioned, specifically lending, but also other embedded finance models that have maybe not done so well as much as lending, and maybe exploring why those and that situation currently persists. And with that said, let me thank you everyone again, especially my guests, Chikodi, Kene, and Dr. Stephen, for being part of this conversation. Over to you, Dr. Stephen, to close us out with the grace, the Kora grace. Coup de grace. The grass. I don't know. I don't speak very much French.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Abraham, and thank you so much, Chikodi Kene, for the brilliant contribution, that you shared. So just to build on what Abraham said, the whole essence of this is to also provide some level of insight and support to the larger African community, as to how they could scale easily. There's no point, starting from below ground zero or at ground zero. There's a lot of leverage that you can take full advantage of, like in the case of Salah. Better platforms that can help you, to take full advantage of lending, courtesy of embedded finance. All right. And there's a lot of data and insight that could help you to do that, which is where Kene comes in. So at Kora, we just provide the payment infrastructure. Our goal for us, is basically scaling, because we've experienced this. Dixon so who is the CEO of Kora and founder, has had like series of entrepreneurial experiences. A number of the pain points, that we've experienced over the years actually led to the creation of the company. And so we understand the pain point. So it's easier for us to resonate with what typical entrepreneurs face. And so if you're an entrepreneur in the room, whether you're on this call live or maybe, a rebroadcast, as the case may be, take full advantage of the solutions, available, from for collections. You start a business, you can launch easily. There's no point, having to suffer in silence or basically not pursue that dream you're really trying to pursue. I heard someone share something with me like some years ago that you miss 100% of the shots not taken. It stuck with me. You miss 100% of the shots not taken. So maybe the reason I've not taken the shots is because you're thinking of starting from scratch. There's no point starting from scratch. There's this thing called leverage. So just leverage. Embedded finance basically is leveraging already existing infrastructure that can help you to scale and take that, shots. So even if you don't hit 100% of the shots, at least maybe you can hit 20, 30, 40%, 100%, as you grow and scale, right? So the message is basically take the shot, and that's what Quora stands for. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. And with that, we have come to the end of this session. We're 20 minutes into extra time. But I think this has been really insightful and has been very helpful, especially if you've not read the white paper. It maybe has provided some context. Thank you so much again, Kora, for putting this together. Thank you, Kene, for all your support in the past months. And thank you also, Chikodi, for joining us for this conversation and also sharing your insights. Everyone who's watching or doing a broadcast, wishing you guys the best with your business. Do have a great week ahead.